Hello, change makers. Today I'll be discussing about the effect of climate change as it relates to natural disaster and conflict. Natural disaster and conflict are in direct correlation with climate change. We must understand that the correlation between climate change and natural disaster is one we cannot overlook. Presently, we look at countries like Bangladesh. Bangladesh is about 2 meters above the sea level. If we don't begin to tackle climate change, a country like Bangladesh, with a rise in water level above 2 meters, will be completely submerged. This highlights the problem of climate change. And let's talk about Nigeria and how this affects our environments. Lagos State, for example, has its highest peak at 6 meters above sea level. This is a problem when we look at it, and that's why we have flash floods every year in Lagos. In other parts of Nigeria, like Lokoja, where we have the confluence, the coming together of the River Niger and Benue, there is also occasion of flash flooding, all as a direct consequence of within and around locations in Nigeria. This in itself led to inflation in food prices and also affected commodity markets. So in more ways than we think, climate change affects our day-to-day activity. So we need to call for immediate actions. We need to call for proactive measures. We also need to look at sustainable plans to mitigate some of these crises that are brewing as a result of climate change. Insecurity is one of the direct consequences of climate change. How does climate change affect insecurity? We've seen in more recent time that due to the flash floodings we've seen in rural areas, there have been a huge migration of rural farmers down to the urban areas. And this has led to a lot of insecurity in the urban areas because the infrastructures are not built to accommodate this population influx into these urban areas. So the urban infrastructures are stretched, and because they are stretched, we have incidents of a lot of insecurity now in the urban areas. Ultimately, we need to understand climate change from a human perspective and not from a theoretical perspective. We need to look at climate change beyond just increase in temperature, beyond global warming, and we need to relate climate change to how it affects human day-to-day activities, how these flash floodings affect the price of commodity, how it affects inflation, and how it ultimately makes us poorer as citizens of Nigeria. We also need to look at it from the point of view where we are having a lot of migration from the rural areas to the urban areas, and this is affecting also production of food, and it's causing food scarcity, it's causing insecurity in some ways in the rural areas where you now have rural dwellers without the necessary skills to survive in urban areas, coming to urban areas and finding out that they don't have the skills required to survive in urban areas. So we must look beyond the numbers. We must look beyond the terminologies and the fancy words of global warming, 2 degrees rise in temperature. We must talk about it from a human perspective. We must relate it to our existence, and then I think that way we'll be able to understand the danger of climate change, the increase in temperature, the increase in sea level, and how this affects our day-to-day activities.